3, so 4 would work. I'm going to do 3. Because I'm lazy.
6, 6, 7.
6, 6, 7, yeah. And what's X bar? What do we find from the sample? Probably the number of 12.45. So a z-score formula never changes. The z-score formula is our data. What's our data? No, I'm not zooming. No, I'm not zooming. There we go. What's our data? What do we find? What's our data? What do we find from the sample? What's our data? No. What's the mean that we got from the sample? 12.45. Our data minus the middle. What are we assuming to be the middle? 10.15. So again, I don't know if, again, I'm sorry if I haven't had this discussion with you. Have you ever heard, assuming you're right? Look at that, something like that, right? Assuming you're correct. So if somebody said, oh yeah, that teacher never makes a mistake. And then you go to the class and they make a mistake. You're like, assuming you're right, what the shit just happened? All right. So a hypothesis test says, all right. Let's assume that it is 10.15. Let's assume that really is the middle. The middle really is 10.15. So we're assuming that is the middle. And then we're going to say, if I get a sample here, I'm going to say, assuming you're right, look what I just did. I just did something really close to impossible. So if I do get a sample in here, what's the probability that that's the real middle? 1%. 1% chance. What percentage shows up in here? Well, 1%. You guys with me? Alpha is the area in that sample. So if I do get a sample out there, then either I just did something that only happens 1% of the time, or the mean should be a little bigger. So what's more likely? The mean should be a little bigger. That's what's more likely. All right, so it is always our data minus the middle. So it's going to come from here, 10.15. We're going to assume that's the middle. Divided by the spread, which we just calculated. Let's see what you guys get. Oh yeah, I already did all these. Yeah, that's a nice one. Anybody got that?
3.448. Or
3.45. I like it. On the surface, if somebody's got that z-score, is that far away from the mean? Yeah, shit, yeah, right? But in this case, again, it's got to exceed the test. How far did I have to make it away? You're all like, I'm not going to say it because you're pointing at it. So 2.326, right? I had to make it that far away. Did I make it far enough away? Shit, yeah. I blew that thing out the water, right? So we passed the test here. So I could put my little, now here's another reason why I call it Z star. I could put a little star. Aw, there's my data. So that is evidence. Just like the guy, if he ran faster than the benchmark, on average, that would be evidence he should be on the team. My sample passed the benchmark. Does it look like it's in here then? No. It looks like there's evidence that it's actually higher. So we made it into what is called the rejection region. It's called the rejection region because if we make it in there, it looks like the null is wrong. I could reject the null. So right now I could say real quick, I could say reject the support the high.
Will there ever be an instance where it's like telling like say where you reject the alternate?
No.
Because you're using the
Nope.
alternate, right?
So,
To figure it out.
you always, there's two things that can happen. You can either find enough evidence to reject the null. So for example, in a court case, right? What is the prosecutor trying to find evidence for? Let's say it's a murder trial. Somebody's on trial for murder. He says he didn't do it. What's the prosecutor trying to find evidence for? Or even against. He's trying to find evidence against him being innocent. He's trying to find enough evidence to say he's guilty, right? So either you do find enough evidence to say he's guilty, or you fail to find enough evidence. And you notice we never say innocent. We say not guilty, which, believe it or not, is different from innocent. It just means this jury didn't find enough evidence. And if you did it, don't do it again, please. So, that's how it works. So we always do one of two things. If we make it in there, we reject the null, support the high. Please let that make sense. I just said the same thing twice. If this guy's wrong, then it looks like this guy is right. That's one situation. If I don't make it in there, I fail to reject the null, I fail to support the high. That's the only things that could happen.
Can you say that one more time? You failed to.
I fail to do those things. Just put the word fail to in front. Either I make it in there and I do these, or I don't make it in there and I fail to do those. Yes?
So Z star has to be in that
Region. Yes. I like it. Technically, if it exactly equaled 2.326, it's not enough evidence. But if it's that close, then you kind of want to maybe give yourself more decimal places. Right? Okay. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. I don't want to muddy things up too much. And you're all like, dude, it's too late. Here's going to be your favorite part. You got to write a little conclusion. Did we make it? Did we find evidence? We did. We have found, calm down, Jeff. We have found sufficient evidence. I'm going to write in approximately English. Right. We have found sufficient evidence to do what? Okay. Which one was my claim? Was my claim HO or H1? My claim in this case was H1. I told you the claim matters at the very beginning, and it don't matter worth shit until the end. My claim was H1, so guess what language I'm going to use? That language. I'm not going to use that language. So we have found sufficient evidence to support the claim. And then you can do what you always wish you could do in English. You can just plagiarize. You can just go right back up. What was the claim? Coyotes live longer if they're given more room to roam, right? Support the claim that coyotes live longer if given more room. Jeff writes worse if given more room. So I understand as a student you guys get lost in the steps. But the claim was it was bigger than 10.15. We found a sample that was really bigger than 10.15. Therefore, the conclusion should make sense. We found evidence that it's more, that they live longer. We found evidence that they live longer. Because look how far up we got. Holy shit. Yes?
So it would never be reject HI.
Never.
Yeah,
Never.
It would just be fail.
Fail to, yes. So again, if the jury comes back and says not guilty, does that mean the person didn't do it? It just means that day they didn't find evidence. It doesn't say anything about the truth. So I can never accept or support the hoe. Because that's a statement I can't even find evidence for in the first place. It's got an equality to it. So I can either reject it or I can fail to reject it. Which means I can either support the high or fail to support the high.
The explanation would just be we did not find enough evidence.
Yeah, if it was a fail, we would say we did not find sufficient evidence to, and then whichever one the claim is, you use that word, yeah. Okay, I like it. Everybody gets confused about when do I say reject, you got a 50-50 shot, or it's just cross out the one that's not the claim and use the other language. Yes, maybe? Because remember, if somebody's making a claim and we're like, I'll investigate that for you, if I come back, I better tell them what the shit happened to their claim. If my conclusion doesn't talk about the claim, they're going to, what are you talking about? What about what I said? Is it right or not? So your conclusion has to be written in terms of the claim that was made. Okay, let's do another one. Yeah! These are fun, Jeff. Give me another one. Okay. I know. Oh, shit. Let me see. Is this the one I want to do? Yeah, this is perfect. Okay. You guys look appropriately pressed. Look at the side. It's got stuff about the Ford Focus. Do they still make Ford Foci? Really? I had a Focus that lived 6 years and then it died horribly. It just all gave out. Well, it was used when I got it. So. Remember, I'm a teacher. This is back in 90 something. That was a good one. Robin. It was not the good one. Maybe. Is it coming? There it is. Don't worry, it's still coming. It's gonna make it. It's gonna make it. Nicholas. There we go. Stuff is happening. Holy shit. Oh, of course. Yeah. There we go. Jeff counted correctly. All right, guys, let's do this one together. Read through there. Can you identify claim? Try to write the claim down, then I'll catch up to you. All right. Have you guys identified the claim? What is it in Mathish? No. I understand why you say that. But again, the claim would be come up with before we take a sample. You cannot look at the sample number at all. There is a belief that is held. There's a claim that is made. Same. So mu equals 38. That's the claim. We're going to go see if it's the same. That's the claim. So we're trying to find evidence that it isn't the same. Right? So the claim is equal to. So this is a beautiful example of somebody's question from earlier. Which spot does that go into? Oh, which spot? Did everybody see that? So again, the claim is not always H1. Just on that first example it was because it didn't have an equals. This one does. So what's the high?
Does not equal.
Beautiful. That kicks ass. What's the opposite? Equal. Not equal. Okay, good. How many tail tests will this be? Why 2?
Because it can be less than or greater.
Kick ass. 2 tail tests. You don't have to actually draw it. I just draw it. So 2 tail tests because it could be up or down to show evidence. I like it. Show evidence. So I said the word evidence without the letter E. Yes.
Why should it be 2 tests?
So the high is always the one I can show evidence for. And how do I show evidence that something doesn't equal something? I can either show evidence that it is. So if I say, no, that doesn't weigh 5 pounds, what evidence would I show to show that's right? I can either show that it's more or less. 2 directions, both directions show evidence. Guys. Yeah. All right. So this step, basically this step is, what the hell are you talking about? This step is, what can you use to talk about it? So what is it that tells me what I can use here?
N equals 71, which is
Good. N is 71.
30.
Check. So that's the first thing to check. So that tells me I can do something.
You know the population.
Good. Sigma no. So that means I can do what? C-scores.
Just to reiterate, we would know use the t-score if it's an S.
Yeah, if the standard deviation was from the sample.
No.
I'm not going to use the letter S all the time. Sometimes I might.
You might just say population sample.
No, because it's one or the other. I would say from a sample we find the standard deviation. So that's a sample standard deviation. Yep.
So you can't, it'll never be like, you have the option to use slow, like either or.
No.
Because what if we knew sample, standard deviation, and
We've talked about this. If I know, so there will be situations where I know sigma, right? In fact, here's one, and we just did one. When I take a sample, can I calculate S? All right. Can you put them in your calculator and have it spit out what S is? Yes. So if I take a sample, I could always figure out the standard deviation. Would I use it if I knew the real one? No. So if I know both, screw S. Right? And I think I've talked about this because there are problems in the book where you know both. And if you know both, screw S. I'm going to use sigma because that's the one that I know is true for everybody. It's not just an estimate, which is what S is. I like it. All right. So now what do we know? We know how many tails. A two-tail test. Z-scores. And what's alpha? 0.05. So can you guys take just a second? Don't say anything out loud. Figure out what those Z-scores are. Maybe using the T-score chart, because again, we're crazy. Two-tail. God, please let this be nice. Two-tail. Okay, two tails. 0.05. Okay, 0.05. Z-score, so I just go all the way. 1.96. That should sound familiar. So what do I put here? Shade in where the evidence would be. So that's my rejection region. Oh, and I forgot about that, didn't I? Shit. Oh, come back to it. How do I say this in words? If Z star is, how do I get in here?
Have it
Greater than 1.96 or less than negative 1.96. So if I'm really far away from the middle, then it looks like the middle is wrong. If I do get in here or there, then what can I say? I can do what with the hope?
Support.
No. You guys, you never support the hope. I don't really care if you think of, what do you think of me? I think it's fine. I like it. Reject the null. Because where does the null think it is? Doesn't the null think it's in here? So if I get a sample that's out there, it looks like the one who thought it was in here is wrong. I can reject that person then.
I thought you asked the middle. I thought you asked if you found it in the middle.
And then if I get out there, I support the high. But also, I never support the hoe. If I did find a sample in the middle, is that evidence that the hoe is wrong? No. Then I would fail to reject it. Yeah. Sort of like saying, you could have killed the guy, but we have failed to indict you. We have failed to find you guilty. Okay, maybe.
So you said you never support the host statement?
Never.
And
Always never.
like in all problems?
In every problem. You're never going to support it. Yeah. All right. 60% of the time it works. Every time. All right. So now that we've set up the benchmarks, this is what the book would call the critical Z-scores. This is where our samples got to show up. We just go see where our samples show up. What do I know from the sample? N is 71. What was sigma? 2.25. So what's the new standard deviation? .267. And then I can calculate my IC score. What's the data? What's our, oh, did I even write it down? I haven't written it down. What's X bar? 37.3. So make sure that you see where I'm getting all that from, where these guys who are telling me is getting it from. So what we find, we found 37.3. So our data minus the supposed middle, what are we supposing the middle to be? 38. Divided by the correct spread, 0.267. Go. Let's see what that is. Did we make it far enough away? Yes, we did. But real quick, just to point something out. If I just asked you, is 37.3 far away from 38? Maybe being in this class you realize you can't answer that, but somebody on the street would say, no, 37.3 is really close to 38. But what did we just figure out? It's more than 2.5 steps below frickin' 38. Why? Because the standard deviation started off kind of small, and then for the means it got even frickin' smaller. So they are very far apart. So what can we say? Did we find evidence or no? Did we fail or succeed?
Yes.
We succeeded. Which, well, I'm going to bring this back. So what can I say? I can reject. I can say exactly what we set up here, right? I can reject the host, support the high. Which one was the claim? Good. So I'm going to use this language at the end. Yes?
So I'm just comparing it to the other problem.
Sure.
And on the other one it says p-value.
Don't worry. We're going to get that back. I forgot about that earlier. I didn't want to do it in the middle of this. So, yes?
Why aren't you using this? Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually.
Which one was the claim? Which one was the claim? There you go. That's it. So the claim gets us started, and then the claim closes us down. Right? In the middle, I didn't give a shit what the claim was. But now I got to write my conclusion in terms of the claim, which only makes sense. So I'm going to say this. So did we make it? Yes. So we have found sufficient evidence. To reject the claim that what? The focused assembly time is what was the claim? I'm telling you, you can plagiarize, kids. Or you can write it a couple different ways. We found evidence to reject the claim that the focus assembly time is the same as it was. We found evidence to reject the claim that the focus assembly time is 38 hours. Right? Those are both variations of the claim. It is the same as it used to be. Or is the same as all others. That's right, because we went to a specific place as other assembly places.
Did you say like overall average? Because that's what the statement said.
Did the average time? Sure. Yeah. All right. What time again? All right, let me see. So we got that. I don't know if you can read that. That's pretty good. Go ahead and try to get as far as you can on the back. Since I am a nice person, contrary to popular belief, do you guys, if you read through that, do you see do you see a standard deviation that I tell you? I have to tell you somewhere that what standard deviation is. You guys see it? The standard deviation? Where did that come from? So that's a sample standard deviation. So you don't know sigma. All right, now try to do as much as you can. Go for it. Just want to point that out. It's going to help you in step 3, also known as C. Some of you guys might be living this reality and kind of laughing about $906. My grad school experience was very plastic. I used credit cards a lot and didn't think about the ramifications. That was awesome. Don't do that, kids. Yes? Up there. Test the claim using alpha 0.01. Yeah.